All right, here we go. So 2.8, like I just said, it's been a long time since I last did this, but I thought it a shame to just end the playlist at 2.7 and never go through the remaining sections. Again, this is from the inner chapters of the ZhuangZi with copious annotations from the Chinese commentaries by Christoph Habsmeyer and John R. Williams. I can't see if anyone's requesting a mic. Someone's tweeting at me. Well, whatever. If you request a mic and you don't get one, apologies. This is a short section anyway. And right now I don't see anyone in the room, so let's just begin. As with the last recordings, I will read 2.8 or the relevant section, and then I will go back and reread it with some of my own thoughts. Again, it's been a while, but I kind of have a recollection of where we were at in the text. This is book 2 of the ZhuangZi, of course. As for relying on the changing vociferations on right and wrong, if one cannot depend on these, one harmonizes them based on the allotted divisions of heaven. Adapting to them in accordance with their arbitrary development is the means by which to live a long life. But what is meant by harmonizing things based on the allotted divisions of heaven? The method is this. See as right in what is not right. See as so-and-so in what is not so-and-so. For if what is right were ultimately right, then regarding the difference between right and wrong would surely be beyond quibbling dispute. If things were ultimately so and so, then the difference between what is so and what is not so and so would surely have to be beyond dispute. Forget all about the years you have, forget all about duty, and sally forth into the boundless, and thus take your temporary abode in the boundless. Okay, so that's 2.8 in translation as given by this text. Kind of obscure unless we remember what we actually read in the previous sections. If memory serves, and I can look back at the previous page here, basically there was this situation with, well, relative to A, it's this way, and relative to B, it's another way, and then there's the way that it is in and of itself, I suppose. And so if I say, that thing's... Well, I think I would usually look at a Heraclitus fragment where it says seawater is death for humans but life for fish. Of course, seawater is what it is and just has these relations, and it all is what it is in its own right. We don't have to call it right or wrong. Seawater is not good or evil or right or wrong. It just is what it is and has, I guess, certain relations to the other things that it's being related to in the discussion. So I think that was the context. It's like, if we're going to bicker about whether something is right or wrong, who will be the judge? Because for me it'll be right, for you it will be wrong, and what's the judge of that? I suppose, I guess what it is in its own right, maybe. But it's been a while since we read that last section. But that's my recollection of it. It's this situation with limited perspectives and with relative judgments. And then what can go beyond a relative judgment, but except for some sort of thing or perspective that includes them all. So what it is in its own right, or what it is as a whole. Anyway, as for relying on the changing vociferations on right and wrong. Okay, so it's a reference to what we previously read in the earlier sections. If one cannot depend on these, all right, so if you can't depend on, I guess, someone saying this is right or that is wrong, and you don't have a final word on it, one harmonizes them based on the allotted divisions of heaven. Okay, so we're going to go down to the commentaries here to figure out what the allotted divisions of heaven is supposed to mean. In Chinese, it's 2 characters there. Let's see, 151. Well, actually, here's a again, if you're not familiar with this book, it has commentaries in the footnotes. It doesn't quote them at length, but it basically takes a selection of commentaries, maybe a sentence from here, a sentence from there, and tries to get you a sense of what the later commentaries say about the text. I do see that the line changing vociferations, Guo Xiang's commentary says disputations over right and wrong are the changing vociferations. Okay. So that's what we're talking about. If you can't rely on these disputes about right and wrong to get the truth, then, or what is, then we're going to go and harmonize everything based on the allotted divisions of heaven. Cui Zhuan says, well, this doesn't look like it's a commentary on the ZhuangZi, but maybe it is. Ni is sometimes written Ni. It is a boundary. And then Guo Xiang again says, Tian Ni, again, the allotted divisions of heaven, are the divisions that are so of their own accord. Tian Ni Zhe. Okay, it's fun, yeah. Okay. So, so allotted divisions of heaven. It's basically how everything is divided up in its own right as it is. So I guess if we took that seawater example, we got seawater, fish, humans, and we harmonize them all based on their allotted divisions of heaven. I guess the allotted divisions would be heaven is that the fish is the fish, the human is the human, the water is the water. Everything is what it is and has its allotted place within heaven, or I'm interpreting heaven as the whole, I suppose. So in the allotted divisions of heaven, everything has the way it is. And the way it is what separates it from everything else. So everything is separated from everything as what it is in its own right. And I guess altogether they make up heaven, which has those divisions of nature or what a thing essentially is as it is. And of course, they wouldn't be right or wrong. They'd just be what they are. Again, this is me reading a lot into the text, but that's kind of what I'm getting from it. Here are some other commentaries. Ni, so how would I translate? I guess allotted divisions. Okay, Ni are allotted divisions. So again, the Chinese was Tian Ni. So the Ni is, Tian is of course heaven, and Ni is allotted divisions, according to this commentator. How one harmonizes with the allotted divisions of heaven is simply through conditioned approval. Right and not right, so and not so, all exist as pairs. They are precisely those of the aforementioned having it both ways. As soon as one takes something as right and so, then moreover a not right and a not so give rise. Thereupon we have our wars of right versus wrong. That's going to require us to go back and look at the aforementioned discussion of having it both ways, which I think I understood as, salt water can be a right and a not right, a good and a bad. It's just relative to other things. And what it is beyond that. Whether this commentator agrees with that, I guess he's more looking at it. If you say it's good, then there's also giving rise to a bad, things that it's bad for, I guess. I don't know. As soon as one takes something as right and so, then moreover a not right and not so give rise. And thereupon we have our wars of right versus wrong. Okay. So he's not maybe commentating on the harmonizing of things, just taking them as they are in their allotted division of heaven, but rather commentating on how we come to have these disputes about right and wrong. Another commentator says, this is to use the allotted divisions of heaven, Tian Ni, to harmonize, He, every right and wrong. He is to, so he's just commentating on how to understand the sentence. Yeah, that's basically just commentating on what the sentence says, not its meaning, but how to, I suppose, read it or interpret it. Let's see what we got here as well. We got next sentence was, adapting them in accordance with their arbitrary development is the means by which to live a long life. Adapting to them in accordance with their arbitrary development is the means by which to live a long life. I mean, arbitrary development. Manyan or something. I'll just give my reading of what I understand to be happening here, which is, if we've, in the first section, said, look, we're not going to dispute about whether something's good or evil or right or wrong, it's not going to admit of a final answer or judgment because it's going to be relative to whatever perspective we're playing partisan for, then we're going to simply harmonize all of reality based on the allotted divisions of heaven. That is to say, we're going to take things as they are. We're not going to say salt water is good or evil per se. When we say salt water is salt water, that's its allotted division of heaven. It's like its essence or what it is in the whole. And of course, being what it is, that is what or where it is in the whole. That's its role. Adapting to them in accordance with their arbitrary development. So I suppose just seeing how that shakes out or taking things as they are, that's what you adapt to. You don't adapt to this limited dispute about right or wrong. You rather adapt to not an ideal, but to the reality, or a limited partisan project of, well, those things are bad, those things are good, that's right, that's wrong, and then act according to that limited system that people have come up with from their perspective, but rather saying this is how it is, these are the allotted divisions of heaven, and I'm going to adapt in accordance with the true nature of things, or how they are, rather than how someone says they ought to be. That, I guess, is where I think it's going. What do we have next? But what is meant by harmonizing things based on the allotted divisions of heaven? Yeah, okay, that's what we're discussing. The method is this. See as right in what is not right. See as so-and-so in what is not so-and-so. For if what is right were ultimately right, then regarding the difference between right and wrong would surely be beyond quibbling dispute. If things were ultimately so-and-so, then the difference between what is so-and-so and what is not so-and-so would surely have to be beyond dispute. Yeah, I think I can read that as confirming what I'm saying. It's taken to mean, look, find what it truly is, what it is so or what it is right. And so when we discuss water, we don't say, well, it's death or life, and fight about it depending on our perspective. We say, well, what is it actually? It's water. And I suppose both the fish and the human would be in agreement on that point. It's beyond quibbling dispute that it is its allotted division of heaven. It is what it is. That's ultimately true, and would not be in dispute. No one's going to dispute that it is what it is, unless they come along and say it is not what it is, which is... I mean, I don't think that position would go well for the speaker. If things were ultimately so-and-so, so if things were ultimately the way they are, then the difference between what is so-and-so and what is not so-and-so would surely have to be beyond dispute. Yeah, people wouldn't dispute that it is what it is. Water is water. Both sides will agree with that. Okay, so I think that at least that's how I'm reading this harmonizing based on allotted divisions of heaven. It's getting beyond the limited perspectives or ideal systems where we rank things as good or evil or helpful or unhelpful or right or wrong, and see it in its own right. And when we are just saying it is what it is, then it's beyond dispute. Everyone's going to agree. Whatever it is what it is. Again, that's also my general opinion about philosophy. Forget all about the years you have, forget all about duty, and sally forth into the boundless, and thus take your temporary abode in the boundless. All right, well, got a bit poetic there. Forget all about the years you have, forget all about duty. All right, well, and sally forth into the boundless. I mean, maybe it's saying forget your limited perspective, and the boundless is going to be the no particular thing, the whole writ large, which of course is what we're taking into consideration when we're allotting divisions of heaven. Because we're no longer speaking from a limited perspective of, well, that's right, that's wrong. We're forgetting that perspective, we're forgetting that position in the whole, and we're taking the whole as it is, the boundless, because obviously as the whole it's not limited to any partisanship or limitation, and then speaking from there. Thus take your temporary abode in the boundless. Yeah, because presumably that's where we're going to speak from as philosopher kings or sages or whatever, because that's how we're going to get beyond these petty disputes of right and wrong and see things as they are in their own right beyond quibbling. and actually get a judgment, which we were never going to get if we just got tied up in these fights about right and wrong, which will just be as eternal as, I guess, as so long as we have different parties arguing and having limited perspectives, the dispute will never end and there'll never be a judge. Now it drops a footnote here, thus take your temporary abode in the boundless, and it's a long one. It gives a few different commentators. When one's years and duties have already been forgotten, then one is shaken and enlivened in the realm where there are no things. When one comes to be untrammeled in the realm where there are no things, then one is always temporarily dwelling in the realm where there are no things to the end of one's life. I mean, I don't know if that comments on the philosophical content. It's more like the personal result of going down this philosophical path. If you forget your years and your duties and see things as a whole, then you'll be shaken and enlivened in that realm of viewing things as a whole and in its own right. When one comes to be untrammeled in the realm where there are no things, which I take to be this I guess perspective's the wrong term, but this realm of not focusing on limited perspectives, then one is always temporarily dwelling in the realm where there are no things to the end of one's life. Okay, so I guess if you realize this broader perspective and ability to accept things as they are, it is what it is. This understanding or realization will always be with you. At least that's how I understand that commentator. Next one quoted here is, one is able to be untrammeled in the realm where there are no things and no right or wrong, and owing to this, one is able to be a temporary dweller in the realm where there are no things and no right or wrong all one's life. Okay, I guess that's saying the same thing. Compare ZhuangZi 1.7.25 and ZhuangZi 7.3. Alright, seeing as I got the book here, let's just flick back there. I didn't do a recording of book 1. I've only been reading through book 2. So hold on. But I've read ZhuangZi before. 1.725. Alright, here's 1.725, which is apparently going to tell us about this realm of the boundless. Why don't you plant it in the precincts of nothing at all, in the open countryside that is vast and wide, and pace idly by its side, roving in a restful bliss beneath it? That tree will not die prematurely by the hatchet. Among things there is none that will harm it, being of no use for anything. What troubles would it suffer? Okay, so 1.7, and it's been given the title here by one of the commentators of The Useless Tree. Master Hui getting another lesson on using the useless from Master Zhuang. Master Hui said, I have a massive tree. People refer to it as the varnish tree. Its trunk is gnarled, so it does not align with a carpenter's line marker. Its tiny branches are curly, so they do not align with a compass and set square. I planted it in the mire, and craftsmen do not deign to look at it. Now back to the matter at hand. Your words, sir, are big and useless. The multitudes all distance themselves from them. Alright, it goes on. And Master Zhuang, you, sir, alone never observed a wild cat. Crouching its body and leaning forward, it lies in wait for a scurrying creature. He pounces east and west, avoiding neither high nor low places, but when falling into a trap, he dies in a net. Okay. And then he goes on to talk about a yak. Alright, it's not a very long section, but the, I guess Master Zhuang is going to praise the uselessness of the varnish tree. And actually there's a lot of tree analogies or tree stories in this book, where the tree winds up being quite useless, and as a result, it's like that Aesop's fable where the person with the axe doesn't cut down the ugly bush because he's going after the big tree to make furniture with. And so the grand stately tree gets chopped down and the small bush is quite happy with itself being small and ugly. No one's going to cut it down. And and there's a number of trees and the like in this book that have a similar experience of being useless and can't make furniture out of them, but therefore it lives longer. People don't cut it down, and actually people might plant it near a shrine and it provides some shade and may even get some worship. Anyway, I kind of see what they're saying. It's the tree will not die prematurely by the hatchet. No one's going to come and harm it. It's not used for anything, so what troubles does it suffer? Well, I suppose if one is not playing partisan, is not getting involved in these disputes about good and evil, right and wrong, no one on the other side is going to come along and hit them with a hatchet. And being of no use for anything, what troubles will they suffer? They don't have to worry about a limited perspective if they accept and appreciate that it is what it is and focus on the whole. And what trouble could come to someone that truly focuses on the whole? Not much, because the whole is beyond any limited good and evil. Again, my reading into it. ZhuangZi 7.3. Let's go see that. Maybe that will enlighten us about the section. Oh, for fuck's sake. I'm looking at chapter 6 again. Here we go. What was it? 7.3. Oh, they just cited the whole section. They don't cite. Alright. Tiangun, heaven's root, was roaming on the south side of Mount Yin. As he got to the river Liao, he there chanced upon Anonymous. Tiangun said, "May I ask your opinion on how to deal with the world?" Anonymous said, "Buzz off. You're a coarse fellow, barging in and asking questions like that. You see, I was just about to enter into communion with the transmogrifier, and when I shall have had enough of that, I shall go ahead and ride on the huge and tiny bird to reach out beyond the 6 poles of the earth, roam in the precincts of nothing at all, and spend my time in the uncircumscribed wilderness. Why are you wasting your time to unsettle my mind with such comparative cosmic trivia as the governing of the world?" Tiangun insisted on his question. Anonymous said, "You had better let your mind roam in bland vacuity, blend your vital energy into vast blankness, accommodate the way things are of themselves, and have no self-centered bias. Then the world will be well governed." Alright, well, I don't know if that's going to result in well governed. Well, I guess maybe the world will be well governed, but it won't be a government for the people specifically. But yeah, he's saying, alright, have no self-centered bias. Then the world will be well governed. So don't try and push one thing over another, I suppose, but let things play out as they will or should naturally, is how I take it. Because what was Tiangun's original question? May I ask your opinion on how to deal with the world? Oh, Qing Wen Wei Tianxia. Okay, so yeah. And what's his ultimate answer? Let your mind roam in bland vacuity, blend your vital energy into vast blankness, accommodate to the way things are of themselves. Okay, and that's it's Ziran. Okay, yeah, so the way it naturally is what it is. So okay, so I see why they're quoting that, because remember up here we said adapting to them in accordance with their arbitrary development is the means by which to live a long life, and arbitrary development seemed to be the way that as related to the allotted divisions of heaven, it's like the way things are and how they play out. And what's he saying over here? Let your mind roam, accommodate to the way things are of themselves. Go with how things are in their own right, I suppose, and don't try to force anything. Have no self-centered bias, and then things will be well governed. So just make sure things can flow without any given bias for one over the other, without interfering with how things play out. Whether I think that's a good way, given that presumably he says, how may I deal with the world? Yeah, you know what? He's saying, how will I deal with the world? Or all under heaven. So I don't know if that's really... Oh, no, but the answer is about governing all things under heaven. or controlling them. But that wasn't specifically the question, though, unless I go back further and see if Tiangun shows up elsewhere. But yeah, I don't know if that was actually his question. Whether he's asking how to control the world. Well, I guess it could be that meaning. But alright, ultimately I think I see what he's saying, and I see why it's being quoted here in the footnotes. Because again, it's a situation where it's saying, you know what, don't pick a side in a dispute of right and wrong. Rather, take everything as it is and get your worldview or your approach by harmonizing everything, by recognizing that each thing is what it is, where it is, and has its own position in the whole. And then let things play out as they play out, and keep in focus the whole and how things have their own position in that whole, and that'll give you a clearer and more realistic and appropriate understanding and, I guess, platform to take action than if you tie yourself to one position of, oh, it's right to be this way or wrong to be that way in a dispute against, I guess, some opposing party that has the opposite view on right and wrong, which, going back to 2.7 and prior to that, was those relative judgments that don't admit of end or of final judgment. All right, well, that's 2.8. I hope I didn't ramble too long. I'll leave you with that. Let me see if... Oh, we do have some listeners. Well, anyway, I'm ending the space now. To those of you in here, I just wanted to reread, or not reread, but make the next recording in the series for the playlist, because we got so close to the end of the Qi Wu Luan chapter, it seemed a shame to just kind of stop at 2.7, given that 2.8, 9, and 10 are pretty short, and then we'll have done the whole chapter, and it's really better to have a completed playlist than some partial attempt at it. And, maybe in the future we'll revisit Qi Wu Luan or a different chapter and give it a more, I guess, thorough or prepared reading and discussion. But at the very least, it'll be good to finish this playlist. So thanks for listening, and I'll put this up on YouTube like usual. Otherwise, have a good day.